5 of the United States Constitution gives we the people the power to put the federal government back in its constitutional box and expand liberty for all. Once 2/3 of the states pass similar applications, a convention of states will be called, and there is nothing the federal government can do to stop it. This isn't a red movement or a blue movement. It's an American movement based on one fundamental question: who decides? Who should decide the issues that affect your community? Washington, D.C., or you? The Convention of States Action Resolution applies for an Article 5 convention that would propose constitutional reforms limited to 3 topics. First, fiscal restraints on the federal government. With over $140 trillion in unfunded liabilities, we need a balanced budget. But our resolution also allows for caps on federal spending and taxation. The second topic is limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. The Supreme Court has authorized the feds to have control over almost every aspect of our lives. The COS Action Resolution empowers us to restore the Constitution to its original intent and return power to the states and the people. Finally, term limits. Thanks to a corrupt ruling class in Washington, trust in the federal government is at an all-time low. That's why our resolution gives Convention of States commissioners the power to send the career politicians packing, including the judiciary and other federal officials. So what can you do? First of all, sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Call, email, or request a meeting with your state legislators to ask them to co-sponsor the COS resolution in their state. Get plugged in with your local Convention of States team so you can stay engaged, educate others, and respond to national calls to action. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.
Are you ready to bypass big media and fight back against the federal government using the power of social media? As a social media warrior for Convention of States, you will reach, teach, and activate your fellow Americans within your sphere of influence. Share the latest Convention of States content. Leave relevant comments on blogs, social media posts, and online publications. And invite others to sign the COS petition and volunteer. Sign up today at conventionofstates.com.
Imagine you were in this room. We're in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the very place where the Constitution was done and the Declaration of Independence. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach, here with Mark Meckler. And Mark, if you had been in this room when it happened, when the Constitution was created, and George Mason stands up at the very end to say, hey guys, wait a minute, we messed up, we got a real problem here, what would you do?
I'd have probably been irritated. Sit down,
you can hear the
George.
grumbling, right?
They're
like let's go home.
Man, it's 2 days. September 15, 1787, 2 days before the end of convention. You guys have heard the story. It's hot in here.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have HVAC back then, so it's hot. The windows are boarded up. They're all irritated by now. They want to go home. Mason stands to address the men, and he says, we have a terrible problem with the document we've drafted.
I can hear the groans now.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh,
Here
George again, right?
Yeah.
And he says, we've given the power to the federal government to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but we've not given the same power to the people acting through the states.
Now I got to stop you there. Back up. They've been here for all those weeks to create a federal government. They've redesigned the whole thing. The Constitution is designed. Here's our 3 branches of government. Here's what states can do. Here's what federal government can do. They've created all of that. And he's saying, wait a minute, we have a problem.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of lost history in there. Actually, the very first draft that went out to the working committees contained this power. The states had the power.
I didn't know that.
The federal government didn't, actually. And when it came back, somehow it had been reversed. And so he notices this at the last minute, literally brings this problem up. Everybody groans. We think we don't have the videotape, right? Yeah. But then he asks a question that I think is the real question, and this question resonates across the ages. He says, are we so naive that we believe that a federal government that becomes a tyranny will ever propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny?
Now wait, let me put that in country boy language. I'm a country boy. That means if the federal government ever gets out of control, do we really think the very people that stole power, that took it without permission, will just give it back? We'll just hand it off to us?
You know, whenever I tell this story in a hall or in a meeting somewhere, people laugh.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what they did. You know, we don't have a recording. We can kind of tell. Madison's notes, in that point, they say nin com. It's Latin for no comment, essentially. That's an abbreviation. No debate. These guys debated everything.
That's the
There is nothing wrong with your screen. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling the messaging in this transmission. We will tell you the topics you may speak about. We will remove any speech we deem unfit. We will identify and protect you from all that is evil. You need only put your full trust in us. We are the government, and we are here to help.
Welcome to another Wednesday Night Live, folks, the day before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone, followers, or if it's your first time, whatever platform you're watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, we're on Twitch and Twitter and Rumble. So whatever it is you're watching us on, just for being there, thank you very much. And even to those who may catch this later and didn't watch regularly, happy Thanksgiving. A great time of year. I love this time of year. It is awesome to be with family, have some time, to yourselves, and just kind of, get that much closer. This particular year, normally we will travel, or my East Coast family will travel, one or the other, but we did not get to do that this year. Just money constraints, and it's a tough world out there, so I don't have to explain that to you. But again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. A holiday that, for better or worse, has been a part of Americana for as long as the word Americana has been a thing. It is something that is deeply embedded in our history, despite attempts from the Marxist professors trying to act up and be like, wow, what Thanksgiving really is. I thought that I would go ahead and have a quick walkthrough of what it actually is. And those that came over on the Mayflower, in particular, had befriended the Wampanoag tribe, and and as well as the neighboring tribe. Both of those two tribes were not friendly to each other. They were trading back and forth. The Native Americans were very interested in our gunpowder and some of our, what must have seemed to be amazing technology in firearms. We, on the other hand, were struggling to plant and irrigate crops. The soil was not lending itself to such, so the Native Americans there had turned in particular the Wampanoag, and had assisted them with that, showing them how to grow corn in that type of soil and how to grow different things, really saving them from starvation. And for a moment in time there really was some cohesion between the settlers and the natives. But obviously, as we all know, over time that eroded. But nonetheless, it was a good snapshot in time where they did actually sit down together, and eat some of the harvest, and kind of get to know each other that much better. And ever since then, of course, as we all know, it has become much bigger than that. It is now really just a time for everyone to stop. And while you should be thankful every day, the world's crazy out there, right? And it's hard, to stop and really soak in, right, what it is that you have. Maybe you don't have millions and you want millions. Maybe you don't have your family close to you, but you're still grateful for your family. Maybe you don't have, whatever it is you feel like you don't have, that tends to come up all year long. And Thanksgiving is really a time to stop and just realize, what, let me be grateful for the things that I do have. And let me be grateful for, maybe you don't see your family as much as you'd like, but you're still grateful that you have a great family, right? Not everybody does, right? So maybe you were hoping to get, to be in a better position financially, right? But be happy that you can provide for yourself, where you're at now, because not everybody can, right? So it's just a moment really to just get together with as many family as you can, or friends, right? Or friends, and just appreciate the things we have. So I just wanted to get that off my chest to get started. And before I start getting into all this all this crazy stuff, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact, and feel free to drop in the comments what it is that you're thankful for the things that you feel blessed with, the things that, that you don't stop enough, right? I think we all can acknowledge we don't stop enough and show thanks for what we have. And so, with that, let me know in the comments what it is, that if you haven't stopped and thought of it that way, then you should, right? Then you should. Then let me be the catalyst that helped you to think that way, because it's something that everybody really needs to do. The Lord's universe is one of structure, and attraction is a real thing. And gratitude, the attitude of gratitude brings a lot back to you. It does. And I can't say that enough. I've used it in my life successfully, and it does, whether it's through prayer, most commonly, right, it's through prayer. But like, even if you're not religious, be grateful for what you have, and good things will come to you. So So I'm going to try and keep this broadcast to the hour. Normally I go an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours in some instances, and we'll see how it goes. If it's heavy in comments at the end, I'm not expecting an enormous viewership this evening, because if everybody's doing what they should be doing, they're with their families right now. So, but that being said, I I wanted to go over this San Francisco thing. And if you're saying to yourself right now, what San Francisco thing, George? I'm not sure I know what that is. Well, I'm here to tell you. So in San Francisco, now most of you will know, San Francisco has really been, as most major American cities that the left and the Marxists have just destroyed, through through lack of policing, increases in crimes, not enforcing laws that are on the books, all of it, right? And so these cities have gone to junk, and this is something we all know. However, what people may not know, if you haven't been keeping up on this, is that they recently cleaned up the streets. They recently, now I got a little clip here that I want to play for you, just to give you an idea, because we all hear maybe that San Francisco's in bad shape, this and that, but we don't really wrap our head around exactly, if you're like me and you live in a suburban community. Even though I'm in the People's Republic of California, Riverside County, it does not subject itself to the psychosis of this mass formation that goes on in LA, San Francisco, New York, etc. But to put it in perspective, here's what the news this was from an actual news clip from that where they went and actually looked at how bad it was, because they kind of stopped themselves and said, all right, we've heard enough from everyone about how bad this is. Let's just see for ourselves. So take a look at this, and this is where we'll start. This will be our baseline to start.
Well, parts of the city aren't just disgusting, these diseased streets can be dangerous.
So how dirty is the city?
Where we'd actually just walk just like this, and we'd see if there was any trash here, and we'd take photos, we'd take video, and then we'd also count how many piles of feces we'd find.
Oh, you smell that?
Even I feel like my eye's darting right now, and I feel like I can never walk the streets of San Francisco the same.
So now there's a whole video on that. I put the link in the description. It should be on all platforms. But just to recap that, so in 3 days, they were just walking up certain streets, right? And in 303 times, they came across human feces on the street. 303 times. 100 different times they found drug needles. All right. And every single street that they went on, there was noticeable, like visible trash, not like cigarette butts or so, like a cigarette butt here and there, but actual trash piled up on every single street that they walked on. Now, that just tells you, if for nothing else, it tells you what Governor Gavin Newsom and the mayor in San Francisco and those and anyone in between, what they think, right? What they think of the population there, what they think of the taxpayer, the fact that it's okay for them to let these people live in complete squalor in one of the wealthiest cities in the nation says something, right? But what really says something is that they just went and cleaned the streets, cleaned them all up like immaculate. People are reporting they can't remember seeing San Francisco so clean. And what's funny is what that demonstrates is that it's not a skill issue. They have the ability to clean the streets of San Francisco and maintain them. They have this ability. They're choosing not to enforce it, not to execute it, right? So, but when Xi Jinping, the leader of the, hands down, it's not even close, not Hamas, not anybody else, hands down, the greatest threat to the United States that there is today, without a doubt, the largest enemy of the United States, both now and historically. It's just we were not aware of what they were up to historically. But nonetheless, the leader of our greatest enemy is coming to our soil to meet our president. And can you just imagine the incoherence of Biden, how dominant Z must have been in that conversation? It's just, I can't even imagine what that conversation sounded like. The second that Biden's administration took over, immediately the exchanges between the U.S. and China were ones of complete disrespect for the United States. Complete disrespect. All right. That's not normal. All right. That's not normal. And now we just showcased this doo-doo on the grand stage so that he can go and meet with our greatest enemy ever. The amount of respect that Xi Jinping currently has for our administration is zero. It's negative, most likely. He's probably trying to get every single thing that he could ever want to get done before 2024. Because if someone like Trump or DeSantis, and it likely will be Trump, but even those below Trump, if any of those people get in, there's going to be a whole new sheriff in town with respect to the CCP. Trump and DeSantis in particular, okay? I think DeSantis would be harder on them because he understands more about the threat that they pose on the societal level. But it doesn't matter. Trump's already demonstrated he ain't got a problem trolling these dudes either. And that he's not intimidated by any of them. So Z knows that this is a limited window for him to work in. And now he comes to the United States, and the Gavin Newsoms of the world have decided that Xi Jinping is worth cleaning up San Francisco for. He has made that decision almost unilaterally that they will spend whatever it takes to clean up the streets.
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
It's true, because it's true.
Is that your
and
answer
that's a fact.
to President Biden?
All right, welcome back. That, of course, is California Governor Gavin Newsom admitting the reasons for San Francisco's massive cleanup ahead of the big meeting between President Biden and China's Xi Jinping on Wednesday. But check this out. Have you seen this? Metal barriers, those right there, are now being installed around the area. San Francisco with barriers.
Now, you see how clean those streets are. And you see that, yes, they put up these barriers, which is kind of creepy as hell in and of its own right. Why do you need those barriers? What are those barriers doing? What those barriers are designed to do is keep the animals. And when I say animals, folks, I mean you. Because that's how they look at you. It's to keep you the hell away from anybody coming down that street. And in some streets, they line those things with Chinese flags. It was just disgusting to look at. Now, what was encouraging is that people in San Francisco did get fed up at one point and started tearing down all those Chinese flags. There was a great video on it that I don't know if it got scrubbed from the internet, but it was real easy to find when it first came up. And when I tried to clip it to show to you, I couldn't find it anywhere. All I was getting is protesters clashing back and forth. And it's like, what? And you know, the other part of this is the way the media handles this as well. If you put in protesters and they focus on the pro Z protesters and paint the anti Z protesters as like being violent, as like it's crazy. It's wild. It's wild. But to the people of San Francisco, and if there's anyone that catches glimpse of this video from San Francisco, to the people of San Francisco, like you cannot forget this. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If Gavin Newsom runs for president of the United States, you need to be in full attack mode. If he runs for governor again, you need to be in full attack mode. Like, you can't be that reason that Gavin Newsom escapes recall. Because my opinion of California, just my experience voting here, is that these elections are all rigged, all of them. I mean, there was absolutely no person when Gavin Newsom was being recalled. I walked in there with 2 ballots, one for me, one for my wife. No explanation necessary. Not a human being standing near the box. I 100% believe that if I had 10 ballots in my hand, I could have put them all in the box and no one would have said boo. And this was right in City Hall of my city. So that's my take on the elections here. But my also take on these types of things is that if enough people like there's a maximum threshold that you can't fix an election at that maximum threshold. Not in the United States. There is a number where if enough people if the left lose San Francisco and how these people could live in such squalor and still vote for these people is stunning enough. Yes, there's a part of me that feels like, well, they deserve it. Like, you deserve it. If you're not paying attention enough to even know what the opposition to these people stands for, and you're just content being like, well, they're all racist, and that still makes sense to you, then you should probably be living in squalor, because that's what they offer. That's what they offer. It's not, San Francisco is not a unique gem in any way. New York is suffering from this, LA, Portland, Seattle. I mean, the list goes on. St. Louis, even Nashville now is starting to get it. Austin's already on its way out. These beautiful cities just torn to pieces by these animale. It just baffles me. And so if you live in San Francisco, like, what a slap in the face this is to you. It's like, look what we could do really quickly. Look how quickly we can clean up these crap streets you've been living on without raising your taxes and without doing anything. Look how quickly we can get this done. So now, when Xi Jinping leaves and the city quickly descends back into the, 303 different sightings of human feces on the streets on 153 blocks. 153 blocks those people covered, and 303 samples of human feces. That's more than that's about 2 on every single block. I mean, and now the streets are immaculate for the United States enemies, for really an enemy to the world. I mean, the amount of people this guy has genocided is just absolutely through the roof, and the Uyghurs and Christians and everything. And it's just, they're all bowing. Now, America's not bowing, but these people are, and they're representing America. So yeah, it's disgusting. It's disturbing. and it should bother us. It should bother everybody, right? But nobody should it bother more than the people of San Francisco. They're living in this squalor. Like imagine just getting that message from you from someone you voted into office, right? You voted someone into office and they leave your streets and your city in absolute squalor, and then our enemies to the country show up and they spit shine them. And now watch them descend back to crap again. And the message is only one message there. The message is that I don't care about you. The message is not only do I not care about you, I don't even want you coming near my boy Z. I don't want you animals coming anywhere close to him. So I'm going to put up barricades to keep you caged while these streets are clean, because you'll mess him up again. And I need him to stay clean while he's here. It's just crazy. Now, I know mass formations. I've talked about mass formations on this broadcast over and over and over again. I've gone through Dr. Matthias Desmet and how mass formations worked. I've talked about conformity. I've explained to you over these last 2 years how it is that people can be so irrational. But yet, and how they will never, the more irrational it gets, once they're locked in, the more irrational it gets, the more they lock it in. But I can't imagine when your own personal experience is so negative. I mean, I could go on in that video. The people, the way they talk about the streets of San Francisco is just nuts. And here their government, here their local governor, local mayor, and their local, their local committees, and they don't care unless they're trying to impress the Chinese. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot make. I mean, what did he say? For months and months, we've been having different conversations, is what Gavin Newsom said, after acknowledging, like, what conversations have you been having, Gavin? Because the only conversation that resulted in any actual change on the streets was the conversation you had about Xi Jinping coming in. I don't know what conversations you're saying you were having for months and months before, but those conversations did not end up in any type of action whatsoever. And so the people there just had to eat it. I mean, years ago, I used to Uber I did it for about 6 months. And I would get people from an airport. And a lot of people, when you do the airports, a lot of people you get in your car are people who have left California and are coming back to visit. And when you hear the stories that they say, like, some of them left San Francisco to go to LA, only to find LA was just as bad. And so they finally, after the double failure, just said, you know what? All right, I'm going to pick a red state and go there. And and they all love it, right? They all love it, but they spread like a plague, because they go there and then they don't understand that they're the reason why the place they left was bad. And that's why all these cities are on their way out, because these people just come in because people are living well in those cities until they get there. And then they get there and they start voting in their own doo-doo-doos, putting in their Soros DAs and doing all that nonsense. And then suddenly, after living there for 5 or 6 years, they're like, you know what? This place is going down too, man. It looks like the whole country's going down. I better find a new place. And they go there, et cetera, et cetera. So the people of San Francisco, the bottom line with all of this is that they need to, I don't know if this isn't blatant enough. This is not a conservative just telling you should vote conservative or you should be more conservative. This is the people you actually voted for explaining to you their complete disdain for you. And that's, and that's something else, right? And I don't know how many people saw. I mean, worldwide, this problem is going on worldwide. There's no doubt about that. The UK is dealing with this kind of craziness. Maybe not with all the crap in the streets. I don't know. Maybe some of my UK people could speak out and let me know if they're actually seeing human feces in the street. I feel like that might be a uniquely American thing, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that is happening. But certainly the vagrants, certainly the lessening of the quality of life. I mean, this is all a precursor of what Marxism has to offer. That's what it is. It's all a precursor of what they have to offer, right? And then how about speaking of global? How about this guy Alberto Fernandez? Is that his name, Alberto Fernandez, the guy that just won in Argentina? This dude. Oh no, Javier Milei. That's his name. That's right. I pulled it up on Google here real quick, and I think it came up with the old guy. But this dude is a piece of freaking work. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if you guys got to see the. I mean, this guy is Donald Trump on steroids. He's like, but good for the people of Argentina, because what he is, what he is he's not buying into the woke crap, right? Bob Dorbin, good evening and happy Thanksgiving. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Bob. Happy Thanksgiving. And he says, like rats and roaches. Yeah, right. And I know what you're referring to, and that's correct. But to talk about this Argentinian, if you guys saw the video where he's got this long board, and listed on the board are all these little cards, and they say things like the Ministry of, like, all the woke stuff going on in Argentina, like the Ministry of Social Justice and the Ministry of Diversity and Education. And he's grabbing each one like, Ministry of Social Justice out, this out, Ministry of Diversity out. He's just walking down the line, chucking stuff like. And the people of Argentina have got to be erratic, have got to be ecstatic about that, because in the end, like I always say, there aren't a lot of these Marxists around. It looks like there are. It feels like there are. Like maybe you go to a protest and it seems like there's a lot of them there, but you got to read between the lines. When you Canada was a perfect example on their Million March for Kids. Like they hit multiple places all over the country, like 130 places they hit, each one with a strong showing, but only one, maybe two. Like the opposition had to pick their spots. And they pretty much, if I remember correctly, picked Ottawa as where they were going to hold their ground. And they were outnumbered there as well. But the fact is, if they spread everybody to try and bring anti-protest to all these places, it would show you on camera that there are not many of these people. Another example of the U.S. boycotts. When the left boycotts something, that place generally does more business than they did before. There's usually a counterbalance that comes in. Chick-fil-A was an example of this. Hobby Lobby was an example of this. But when the right finally decides to go at it, it's devastating. Not just Bud Light. Target took it on the chin. These companies never recovered. They just lost that business and lost it permanently. And what it shows you is that there aren't many of these Marxists out, not nearly as many as they would have. This is all smoke and mirrors, folks. It's all smoke and mirrors. Half the people, even when they do try to counter protest with some sort of numbers, more than half of that crowd doesn't even know why they're there. I mean, that's real talk. You see these people walk in there and start asking them what they're doing, why they're there. They don't even know. Half of them. Some of them are just start spitting off the talking points, but they're just a few facts away from being stunned and walking away angry. There aren't many of these people, but it's hard to see that. It's hard for us to understand that there aren't many of these people because the media will give every camera angle. They will, but the reality is bots don't buy products, right? And that's what well, everything you're seeing on social media. I mean, who knows what the actual estimate is, but I can tell you it's easily 70% are bots, easily. And you don't even know anymore if you're engaging with a bot or if you're engaging with a real person. But I can tell you that at least 70% are bots. And it's wild because it's just designed to give the impression, right? To give the impression that there are a lot of people who think that way. And there are not a lot of people who think that way. And when you look at the United States, I mean, I can tell you, even in New York City, I'm out here in California. Yeah, there may be you may find some of these do-to-dos in LA, but even in LA, you find people who are more conservative minded and do not, well, they may not speak favorably of Trump for fear of their peers, but they as far as policy is concerned, they're not okay with all this nonsense. They're not okay with all this off the rails gender nonsense. Even gay people aren't okay with it. Like the fact of the matter is, if we just look at each other, right, and focus on the people on your block, in your neighborhood, right? Don't worry about hearing about every single robbery that took place in the United States the other day, because that's what social media is, right? It's just this constant, every single. So if you wonder, like, this stuff didn't happen in the 80s, well, yeah, it did. It just, you didn't hear about every single thing that happened because there's only so much time on the hour nightly news. And frankly, one of those stories will make it, and the other 9,955 that happened that day did not make it. But in the end, these people, my whole point here is that these people don't exist. And if you get to know your neighbors and you get to know the people around you and you start to take actions on a local level, right? And really, that's what this is all about. That's what Article 5 is all about. But it's not even just Article 5, it's all of it. It's every issue that you have for your community. Forget the national legislature, forget them. Behave as if they don't exist and demand that your local legislators behave the same way, because it doesn't take a lot of you to remove a local legislator. It does not. Right now, there are not enough people paying attention. Everybody's got their eyes on the big shiny stuff. Hillary's emails, the Benghazi, and it's not that things like Benghazi are not a big deal, because they are. But in the end, the things that are going to affect your life, the things that are going to change your quality of life, the things that are going to make things better for you, are all going to be handled through local legislature, including Article 5. When you deal with the way the nation was designed, and again, it is my mission to bring civics education to the American people, because it's been void and has been removed from schools since the late 60s, replaced with this social studies, which is not civics, despite having the occasional drip of civics dropped into it. It is not civics. And it's not an accident that social studies started being taught instead of civics. The fact that no matter who, I could tell you if I have a nickel for every, well, inflation, maybe if I had a quarter, if I had a quarter for every proud American who loves the Constitution but doesn't really fully understand exactly how this nation is designed to operate, I would be a wealthy man. If just one quarter for each one. Because it's not their fault. It's not, I mean, it is, right? Because in essence, you say, "Oh, it's their job." But the thing is, they don't even know they don't know. So it's like, how do you fix a problem if you don't even know there's a problem? If you think that you understand the Constitution inside and out, then, and you don't, right? And I start telling you something about how the country was designed to run through local government, and you sit there and go, wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that. It's not a moment for me to be like, haha. That's a moment for us both to be like, yes. Now take that information and go tell somebody else the way I took it from those who explained it to me, and validate the information. Don't if you need sources and things, just tell me. Be happy to give it to you. Bob Dorbin, how are you, sir? Again, it's because of mainstream media control. They only talk about what they want you to hear, conforming to left agenda. Yeah, Bob, and it's not only that, but it's not even like there's this dubious newscaster who's, wants to trick us. And like the newscasters, number one, most of them believe this stuff. That's the first part. Most of them have gone through our university system and have heard these things to be true, have heard all of these nutty, Marxism has never really been tried. Like they believe all this stuff. So that's one part of it, right? So it's not that they're being dubious, it's that this is the information they're being fed. And then you get the senior journalists who have been around for a long time, right? And what the problem with them is they're too easy to manipulate. They've got this network of friends that they've created over the course of those years, and all that has to be done is someone to give false information to one of those friends. Because now they'll bring that friend on, and he'll be an army general or someone of stature, right? And start popping off, from the people who he trusts but shouldn't trust, and just start popping off the talking points. And now the journalist believes this because he knows this guy. They've worked together so many times. But in the end, it's like, well, I don't care how many times you've worked together. The reality is he may not be trying to dupe you, but you're being duped. And they go out and they take their marching orders and they move on. This is Operation Mockingbird never ended. It's not like there was a moment where the CIA went, you know what? This Mockingbird thing, it's not ethical. It's not ethical. We're going to have to let it go. Like that never happened. And so they're still at it, folks. They're still at it. But we know this, right? These are not, I'm not telling you. I'm going to sit here and tell you, right? And I'm sure Bob's the same way. Like we sit here and tell you that, the mainstream media is lying to you. I think we've all figured that out by now. I don't trust any of them. Not Fox, none of them. The only time I ever go on to any of them is if there's actually something happening at the moment. Like something breaking at the moment. And I just want to see the footage. I want to see, what's available. I'm never getting on to listen to their talking points. Ever. It's just not something that I would do. And here, so for those that don't know, Bob is a cause district. And Bob, I may have to have you on the broadcast one time. He's a district manager for. Are you a district manager, Bob? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you're a district or regional. I'm not sure, but anyway, Bob's saying his district is growing, and that's more and more people coming on and realizing that there is something we can do, right? That we're not in this position of helplessness, that when we look at these monumental failures, and we recognize even that those failures in many ways are our own, right? It's not like we're pointing the finger. At least we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be pointing fingers because this all happened right under our noses. But it's you know what? It was the ideological subversion is a game that we were not ready to play. And I think that's the fairest assessment that I can give to that. It's just a game that we were not ready to play because in the end, nobody believed it. And still today, people don't believe it. If I tell you that, you know what, this thing just keeps moving. I got to let it go. Can you hear me good? All right. So if I tell you that, everything that you know, I mean, if I tell anyone everything that you think you know, everything that you grew up with, and this goes back, Generation X is not exempt from this. The boomers are not exempt from this. I mean, most of it's like that source that Tucker had regarding the Kennedy files, where he actually had access to the pages that Trump still restricted back in 2017 and are still restricted to this day. He had access to those pages and said everything you think you know about the United States is a lie, and I believe that. I don't know if it's every single thing I think I know, but I think there's enough stuff that we've been lied to about, period, like repeatedly over the course of decades, that telling somebody, now this is not the same type of lie, right? Ideological subversion is different than what the CIA is doing. I mean, they may be engaging in some of that on their own, but they're not the ones who started all that. That all came from the Soviets, and then 1990 when they fell, the CCP picked that ball up. But this ideological subversion game is no joke. Like, it's very real. It's a very real tactic that we were not ready to play that game. We were not ready to play that game. And so now here we are. People walking around going, how did we get here? How did this happen? There we go, district captain. All right, Bob, thank you. I get that clear. I thought you were a district captain, but I just, for some reason, I wasn't sure. So I wanted to make sure we got that right. Yeah. So, but like, when you look at, if I was telling my brother, I'm telling my brother one time, just in the midst of explaining this, because the tactic of ideological subversion is the same with all Marxist, takeovers and whatnot in every country they've ever done it in Mao's China, Stalin's Russia, or Soviet Union, whatever, in Venezuela and Vietnam and Cuba. It's always the same thing. It's why when defectors come here, they're like, oh my God. Even in the 50s, they were saying this. Ayn Rand, the author of Atlas Shrugged, said this, was like, I just defected here and immediately realized what they were trying to do. And so years go on of them, replacing university professors. That's really where it started, right? You get someone programmed, and then you get them into a university, and then you get as many of those people into universities as you can. Now you've got another batch of kids coming through the universities, and this is what they're hearing. And they're hearing this with validation, and they're hearing this without opposition. They're hearing this they're hearing Marxism is good, America's the devil, America, everything's because of America. Look how corrupt America is. Soviet Union's awesome, etc. Marxism, Leninism is the way to go. And they go through and they graduate, and this was the 60s. And then that produced who else? The hippie generation. Our boomers were the first ones to get exposed to this. And boy, did it show. Right now that you look back at it in hindsight, it's, but now when you look at the person who actually was a hippie, if you look at the boomer who actually believed these things and maybe even still does, going back now and telling them that entire belief system was a psyop, that just sounds too wild to wrap your head around. But that doesn't make it untrue. It does not make it untrue. And the pushback against that gave us Reagan in the 80s. But it's not, even with Reagan, it's not like it stopped. They were still putting people in position in Hollywood, putting people in position in newsrooms, putting people in position in all of these things. That by the time this went all the way up, and it's not like no one was telling us this while it was happening, they were, but we were just like, get out of here. That'll never happen in America. And now here we are. Here we are, 2023. That it's no longer just universities. It's all the way down to grammar school and preschool now. And if not for 2020, they would still be indoctrinating these children. They're still trying. It's just now, I was listening to Glenn Beck talk with a former Soviet defector. and he was talking about what it was like being a kid, and it reminded me a lot about that movie. I'm missing the name of it now. It was about the final account, I believe it was, where it was the children of Nazi Germany. They're all about to die. Someone went and did a documentary to talk to them before they do pass, and some of the testimonials that they give about what the schools were like. It's the same thing that this guy was giving. He's saying, at the breakfast table, I remember talking to my father. He'd say a conversation. He's like that Americans are going to have to start having now. You better be having these conversations now. And the conversation was, you know what? There's reality, there's truth, and then there's what you're going to learn in those classrooms. Learn to read, learn to write, learn mathematics, forget everything else. They're going to try to rewrite history for you. They're going to teach you all kinds of stuff to get you in line, to program you for Soviet allegiance. You need to stay away from all that. And those are conversations that we need to have with our kids today. They really are. And people are having those conversations with their kids. They're engaging a lot more, and it's a good thing. So they're no longer operating in the shadow. So the pendulum is already turning back. It's just like Yuri Bezmenov says when he mentions all this, he's like, when the interviewer asked him, well, how do you stop it? He was like, you don't. You have to just raise, he's like, once they're programmed, he's like, they're gone. You've lost them. Forget them. He's like, they're programmed to react to certain stimuli in a certain way. You're not going to change that. So the only way to turn it around is to raise new generations of patriot-minded people, American patriot-minded people who love the country, understand its true history, and just continue to raise generations like that and phase out the madness. And so that's where we're at right now. But that takes too long to fix the problem. I mean, they're too far advanced to just do that. Right? They're just too far advanced to just do that. Because these people, you got to understand, a kid goes to college today, not only is his professor teaching this to him, or even in high school, if you got one of those do-to-do professors, not only is that teacher teaching it, but that teacher's teacher taught it. That teacher's teacher taught it. These people have now gotten themselves into places where they're touting all types of these, ridiculous academic degrees and awards and prizes and respect and adulation, and they're just straight out preaching Marxism. Like that's how long this has been going on while we were just sleeping at the switch. Now, all of that being said, we're not really sleeping, and there's still a lot of people sleeping, but there are a lot of people who have woken up. Right here in California, there are 2 school districts in particular who are straight up going to war with the state. They refuse to acknowledge these state mandates of not telling parents about sexualizing their children and all of that. They just refuse to do it. They're making mockeries of state officials when they come to their board meetings, like they're just not having it. And so they're filing these lawsuits, but there's no way. There's no way that they're going to comply with this. And why does that happen? Because when parents found out, they put their own people in the school board. And that's how they roll. The destruction of critical thinking, I say research. Yeah, what doesn't resonate with your conscience? Yeah. And that's that last piece. I was about to say research is subjective, right? Because people will be like, well, I did research, and they think Googling is research. Like, no, like very few people look for source documents. Very few people, and one of the things that I would say when looking up and trying to determine, I mean, this is how I determined Convention of States was the way to go. I mean, when I first heard it, it just sounded too good to be true. And I began, and I'll give you the process just to give people a process to work with, is I start off by saying this is BS. and I want to find everything I can that's going to talk about this being BS and why. Then I go and say, this is true. And then I go and I look for everything I can find that says this is true, right? Because the days of just going to look up, a topic are over. You now have to be 100% conscious of what spin that information is coming from, and acknowledge that, all right, the right's going to spin this, the left is going to spin this, knowing that they both spin, let me hear their spin, and then you can make a determination for yourself. Now, I would argue to you, in the overwhelming majority of issues, you are going to find yourself being what today is called conservative. And there is no real conservative. Everything's far right wing conservative. Like if you don't want your daughter to be in a public bathroom with a grown man, you're a far right conservative. Like that's where we've gotten ourselves now. But that's where you'll find yourself. And I did that with Convention of States, and you know what? I quickly realized, after listening. So first I listened to the Soros organizations. I listened to John Birch Society. They all share the same argument. Publius Hulda. I got into all of them. And all their fear-mongering and how they were going to rewrite the Constitution and all of that. And then I got into Convention of States, and I signed up, I volunteered, I wanted access to the College University material. I got that. It led me to go read some specific Federalist Papers. It got me to, the Federalist Papers were a great example. Federalist Paper 40, one that's often taken out of context by JBS and by Soros groups, etc. It was blatant that they were taking it out of context, the quotes that they were using from it. And I recognized that. And immediately, this is the common sense part, right? When Bob here says, what doesn't resonate, right? If you know somebody's taking a quote out of context, immediately that person is suspect. Because that's a tactic, right? And if they're taking that quote out of context, then it's a tactic. So anyone using tactics, I immediately find suspect. Immediately. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying. It just means red flags are up all over the place because you're using tactics. And I went on later to figure out they were using this tactic in all different types of ways. And then it became, all right, I don't know what their motivation is, but I know it ain't good. And it led me in the right direction, right? And when in doubt, right, when it comes to the Constitution, when in doubt, look to the founders. Look to the founders. Right? It's like as a Christian, if you got problems in your life, where do you look? You look to Jesus, right? That's where you look. Well, when it's the Constitution, right? You look to the founders. I do believe they were led by Jesus to write it, and in the end, or their understanding of so many different scenarios that would come. Including, even though they don't know the WEF and all that, they knew that the federal government they knew something bad was going to happen with this federal government, that it was going to grow too big, and it was going to become a problem. And you know what? They gave us plans for when that happens so that we don't have to resort to revolution. We don't have to, because revolutions almost never end well. Ours is still ongoing, right? So far, historically, for its entirety, it's been pretty good. It was never perfect, but we've always been able to correct our mistakes. And we can correct this one. But we have to, in order to make that correction, we have to at least know how our Constitution works. We have to at least fully understand that, for everybody that if the support for Donald Trump, if half of that support could be on fixing these problems, half of it, it'd be done already. It would be done already. And I'm not saying Trump can't fix some problems. I'm saying the president can't. The problems that we have, the large problems that we have, the border the president can address, absolutely, which is perfect because this particular convention is not addressing the border. But outside the border, He's not going to lower the debt. The debt skyrocketed under Trump. And you ain't going to find someone who's more into his job than Trump. And the debt skyrocketed. I mean, like the fast forward button was pushed. Maybe not as heavy as the Biden fast forward button, but it doesn't matter. Like our goal has to be to get that debt to stop. Even just stop. If the clock just stops, it never has, by the way. It has never gone in reverse once. Not once. Not since we've come off the gold standard anyway. And so, because we've been operating under modern monetary theory, and when you operate under that, deficit spending is good until it's not. And this is how we've been operating for decades on end. And nobody cares because we're all into our own lives. And I get that, right? You're raising some kids. You got stuff going on. You're trying to get that next job. Not sure what your career. I get it. But in the end, if we don't get this right, like the idea that you could just keep worrying about that stuff and we don't get this right and you're just going to keep worrying about they'll take care of that for you. You won't have to worry about any of that. The state will be educating your children. There will be no other option because that's where it's headed. Probably won't even have your grandkids probably won't even have human teachers because that's where it's headed. It doesn't have to be that way, but it will be if we don't turn around and do something. And what's crazy to me, and what made me get so adamant to the point where, even dealing with the shadow banning and whatnot, like I do these live events, 18,000 followers on Facebook. By accident, there should be 500 people who just crisscross over, and watch for a little while. There are times where on Facebook I'm focusing on now because the following is so much bigger. And now I'm on Twitter, folks. So head over to Twitter. It's patriotthinktank.com. The middle T, there's just one. Between the end of Patriot and the beginning of Think Tank is one T. But go follow me over there. I stream the Wednesday Night Lives there now. And I'm also trying to start taking it more. I've had the account for a while, but I've never really used it. And now I'm starting to appreciate Twitter a little bit more now. So, I'm getting in there and I don't really know how to grow a Twitter following. So I'm just appealing to you guys. But that being said, right, we have a path, folks. And that's the bottom line. This is the bottom. We have a path, but ask yourself, do you understand? Do you understand if you have a grievance, where you're supposed to go with that? I'm interested. Leave in the comments. I'm interested to know if you have a grievance, where do you go with that? Because if your answer is anything other than your local legislature, you're doing it wrong. I don't know how else to explain it except you're doing it wrong. And so the reason I say that is because the local legislator is the closest to you. It's the closest, your district, representative, right? Whoever that may be, whatever state you may live in, right? The bigger states have some more bigger districts, the smaller ones, smaller districts. But nonetheless, relative to your state, that district legislator, okay, whether it's a House representative, even committee members on a more local level, right? Even no matter what it is. But I would say definitely your House members and your state senators. These people are representing not state senators in the federal Senate, your actual state legislature Senate. And what I would say is these people are much more likely to talk to you. These people, with a little persistence, they are busy, but with a little persistence, you can get on their calendar. I've told the story many times about, last year we had 4 states join. And one of those states, actually all of those states had some story similar, but the one state, it was one constituent who turned that whole state around because that constituent went to the right legislator, sat down with him, and did nothing more, right? And the legislator sat and had tea with him. He was telling the story on the floor, and he sat and had tea with him. And the constituent went ahead and asked him where his opinion was. Now the state hadn't gone. We've been trying for this was actually predating me probably, but they had been trying to get the state on board for I don't know how long. I mean, what it was going on for some 7 years by then, 8 years trying to get them on board, trying to get them on board, trying to get them on board. This guy keeps blocking it. And now it was a constituent. It wasn't a lobbyist. It wasn't some, big fancy dinner that they discussed this over, where if you do this for us, we'll do this for you. No, it was a constituent who asked him the question, what do you think? And what his answer was that I've generally been against it, but honestly, I don't know that much about it. That was his honest answer, and I appreciate the honesty. But I am a little annoyed that he didn't do the reading on his own when it came up in the legislature, but that's neither here nor there. He was honest enough to admit that to the constituent, and the constituent went ahead and handed him some information on Article 5 and said, look, I'm only asking that you do one thing, because I know what the arguments against it are. I'm only asking that you take this information, and there were some sources in there for some reading material, probably Rob Nadelson's Law of Article 5. If you haven't read that, that is an excellent read. Truly breaks it down, exactly, not just that it's constitutional, but that why it's constitutional and how many precedents are set for it. But he gave him this information and said, all I want you to do is promise me that you will look into these materials and you will read them. And you know what? He agreed. He went and did it. And like every other state that turns over after going against it for so long, the crazy admission that he was against it. He's saying this on the floor. This is how I caught on to the whole story, is that he's saying the reason why was he's saying he was against it before he read his way into being for it. And I can't underestimate that enough. And I apologize. My eyes are drifting, but it's because I'm trying to find something. I actually had a clip that I'm not finding at the moment, but I had a clip of a couple of legislators having this conversation. I want to say they were in South Carolina, but now at the moment I am not able to find them. And whenever that happens, yes, sums up exactly how I feel. So I'm not able to find it for now. But I had a clip. They were talking about the same thing. It was two other legislators, other than the ones that I'm telling the story about, who also said the same thing. Who were like, I was against this before I was for this. And I think I might have found it. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. I couldn't see his whole face in there. This software doesn't let me just tag the videos. I can only see the clip. I found it.
Again, I studied myself from being opposed initially to being supportive because I saw how significant the framers considered this to rebalance the power between the federal and the state government, and they were very, very committed to balanced political power, not excessive political power.
I also came around. I was against the Convention of States, but I have also, after reading and reading and reading, have become convinced that you're absolutely correct. That era we need to use, and it's unfortunate that we're even having to have this conversation, Senator, do you know? Why should we be doing this at all if the federal government would simply live within its means?
Right, and that's two others. And what I can tell you is that goes on over and over and over again. It goes like all of I sat, ever since getting into this and ever since realizing this to be the solution and kind of making it my passion hobby to fight, right? And the one thing I realized being here in California, and I've gone to some letter signing events and things like that, but the one thing I realized that I could do more than anything else was to try and inform people, was to try and educate people, because I truly believe that once you understand this solution, once you understand the power behind Article 5, you realize There is no other solution. That this is it. It's not like I think this is the best one of many. There's no president we can elect to do this. A president can complement this, right? It would be great to have Donald Trump in there securing the border while we're fixing the fiscal problems and the other, the other issues we're dealing with. Well, we're dealing with government overreach of authority, issues and the issues, anything under those topics, right? So you're talking anything from eminent domain to, getting rid of eminent domain to getting rid of regulatory agencies to shutting down the regulatory agencies, no more Department of Education, right? No more mandates, none of that. You can get rid of all of that. And not just get rid of it, but get rid of it in a way where Congress can't just legislate it out of existence. Like, it ain't permanent because technically we could undo it, but like we're not, right? So it's permanent. And more important is that when you do amend it, because if you think about it, the power of the federal government, they didn't legislate themselves these powers. Most of these stretches of power have been brought up in court, in the Supreme Court, and have precedent. That the courts have just been making horrible decisions, little by little, death by 1,000 cuts over the course of a century. Sometimes a gash, but most of it death by 1,000 cuts. Just a little more power here, a little more power there, a little more power here, until we turn into this. And there's only one way. There's only one constitutional way to tell the Supreme Court to go pound sand. And that's through constitutional amendment. That's it. That's the only way. So the idea that we can't fix this is crazy. Of course we can. Do I think we're going to get every amendment that I want? No. No, because it's incredibly hard to amend the Constitution. But do I think we're going to get term limits? Absolutely. That's on this current. And there are 19 states on board now. So and we need 34. We need 2/3 of the states to sign on, and we'll need 38 to ratify. I could tell you 38 states will ratify term limits. That will happen. It'll happen. Okay? A balanced budget amendment? That will happen. What the teeth in it are, I don't know. But it will happen. And hopefully it happens. And that's the thing. When the 34 states get brought in, when the 34 states pass their petitions to call for this convention, it's not over. It's just getting started. Now we start hitting up our local legislators with what we want. Right? Now we start hitting them with what we want, because that's what's going to go when they start selecting delegates to go. I could tell you many, if not the majority, of the people that go that get selected as delegates to convention are going to be state legislatures or state legislators. And it's important. And we need to let them know. And we will. And we will. And when, regardless, term limits will go through, I'm sure at least one on each topic will go through, right? Term limits is what it is. But fiscal restraints, few things can happen there. What's on my wish list? Abolish the 16th Amendment. It's a godforsaken abomination that should have never been added into that Constitution, but and has been just as a point to make as to how difficult it is to get rid of something once it's in there. It still exists, and it has changed the fabric of the relationship between the government and corporations ever since. Repeal that amendment and the IRS is gone. Gone. You literally wiped it out of existence. The day after ratification, the entire building of the IRS will be packing up boxes and heading out the door. That's power, folks. That's power. And that power belongs to us. It never went away. It never went away. It's always been ours. Like, it's like pulling teeth just to get someone to sign the petition in their state and be heard. Just to have someone be counted. It's been pulling teeth. I put in the opening ticker social media warriors. Like, that's a way to volunteer. You can be, if you're already you're watching this on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Rumble, you're watching this on Twitter, you're watching this there, be a social media advocate. Educate yourself up to speed, and they will make sure that the organization Convention of States project will make sure that you're educated up to speed. And once you are, get out there and start battling. Start injecting it into conversations. So yeah, the tenets of the convention. This is Bob, who's the district manager. The tenets of the convention of states are simple: propose term limits across the board. 2, impose fiscal restraints. Single bill consideration. Right. So here, that's a good one, Bob. Thank you for bringing that up. Single subject. Right. Gates tried to get this through the House. It's like a joke trying to get it through there. No, it goes right into the Constitution. You want to write a bill, you want to pass a piece of legislation, one subject. You want to pass a bill for our veterans? Okay. There better be nothing else in that bill except what's needed for our veterans. I don't want to hear anything about, lizards on treadmills or the effects of the sexual behaviors of Japanese quail doing cocaine. Those are real, by the way, both of them. Both getting multiple millions of dollars. Good call out there. And then to reduce the size and the power of the federal government, returning it to the states. It's not hard, right? We're not asking. It sounds like, it's such a crazy change, such a big deal, but it's not. In the end, 74.4% of registered Democrats do not oppose it. All right. That's what you're seeing here. 50.2% support it. 24.2% are not sure. I'm here for the not sures. I'm here for those who are not sure on all sides. On all sides. But saying you're for it is not getting it done. Like we're responsible for educating each other. We're responsible for grabbing that patriotic person. And there are patriots that, I don't do Republicans and Democrats. Anyone who watches this for any length of time knows this country's made up of Marxists and Americans. That's what it is. And many of the people who are on the American side are still registered as Democrats. They're not all Marxists. There are many Democrats who think this is absolutely ridiculous what these people are doing. But the fact of the matter is, the support is already there. Who disagrees with term limits? Who disagrees that we're spending too much money? Who disagrees that mandates like vaccine mandates are just out of control? Like, of all the things that we can find, the laundry list of things we can find to fight about, these are 3 topics that are they're undeniably solid from all aspects. And all you need to do to get this process started is go to, right from my website, thepatriotthinktank.com, thepatriotthinktank.com. The first button you're going to see outside of a potential pop-up on the actual webpage is to go to, it's going to take you over to Convention of States and to their petition signing page. You go in there, you click volunteer, and then get yourself signed on. If for nothing else, as a social media warrior, but at least you're doing something. If for no other reason, do it to educate yourself. Do it to make yourself better, right? Do it to make yourself. And again, even if you are the constitutional patriot that does fully understand, the ins and outs of every that's great. But you can't tell me that you don't know a ton of America-loving patriots, constitutional patriots who don't. And that's, that really is the bigger mission. Because once this is over, once this whole thing ends, and when I say ends, I mean whatever's going to get ratified gets ratified. Whatever doesn't. And we've gone through the convention and the process has been completed. Regardless of what gets done or not done, the real win here, okay, is that the fundamental relationship between the federal government and we the people of the United States will have been forever changed without going back. Forevermore, because we will always be able. It's not like the people who got a call disappeared. We don't just fade away like Homer into a bush. We're still there. And so if a president comes in again who wants to totally disregard the border and put the nation at risk, well, you know what? Then the rumblings start. And the next thing you know, there's one state filing a petition, and two, and three. And because the situation is so universal, you get 4, 5, 6, we're up to 20. Now, all of a sudden, the federal government's like, whoa. You don't have to get to 34 again. They're going to start sending military. They'll do whatever the hell they got to do to not lose more power. The federal government is the child of the states. It is not the other way around. Don't let the idea that, well, federal law trumps state law. Don't let that nonsense dupe you into thinking that the federal government trumps the state government. It does not. It does not. The states set the parameters for the federal government, not the other way around. And it's important that we all understand that and that we all embrace that. And in doing so, we start learning how to go through our local legislators to get things done. And in your state, who knows? Maybe there's some cleanup required. Maybe, you know what? No one's really been paying attention in those districts. And some doop-de-doo like Mitch McConnell has been, running show. And I don't mean from a federal side. I just mean a doop-de-doo like him in your state legislator. Right? So like maybe that's the case, and maybe that activity turns into saying, hey, we got to remove this guy and start with someone new. The same way we did with the Board of Education for all of these different schools. Because these are things we can impact, folks. Sitting there focusing on the federal government is going to get us nowhere. These people, good luck trying to talk to your senator. Good luck with that. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. So, folks, I want to leave this on a good note, though, right? I'm kind of on a mission to leave this on a good note. So, what I would tell you is this, right? Have a happy Thanksgiving. Start this holiday season by signing this petition and clicking the volunteer button and just seeing. Someone's going to call you not from a national center. They're going to call you from your neighborhood or a local neighborhood to you. The person that called me, 40 million people in California. The person that called me when I clicked volunteer lived about 25 minutes away. I ended up heading out. I went to an event at her house. We did a signing party, writing letters to our legislators. Like this is the kind of activism that matters. And if we're serious about trying to take it all back, folks, like if we really are, yelling about it's not going to get it done. It's just not. And Bob here, who is a district captain, and that's by district, we mean your local districts, right? Each one has its own captain, folks. There's a lot of people. It's not like me and the mouse in my pocket that are running this, that are promoting this movement. There's an entire national organization with infrastructure and everything already set up. All it needs is people. All it needs is patriots who love this country. And we're not asking you to, we're not asking you to build houses. We're asking you to, look, even as much as get online and advocate once you've educated yourself. And frankly, just educating yourself is of benefit to you, is value that this brings to you. Because there's more than Article 5 that you learn. It's Constitution in general and the founders' intentions in general. Key reference points to Federalist Papers. I've gone down a journey with Convention of States without, and I never even formally right? Now I show up at these events and things like, when they do stuff locally and they ask me to come in, I've done some video editing and stuff. And that's the type of stuff that really, even that contributes, right? Maybe you got a skill set that's in need, right? Whatever, maybe you've got leadership skills and maybe they need, maybe there's a temporary district captain in your area and they need a district captain. Who knows? We don't know until you click the volunteer button and have the conversation. Let somebody call you and have the conversation. I hope a lot of petitions get signed tonight. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will be on again next week, so I look forward to seeing everybody then. Remember, we are on Twitter now, or I keep saying we. It's me, folks. It's me. There's no one here to pop up graphics and do all kinds of fun stuff. It's me. If you hear me yell at the producer, it's me. There's no one else. Just me. It's me, the producer. So anything that goes right or wrong with the show, you can always point your finger directly at me. But that being said, I'll be on next week every Wednesday night, 5:30 on the following platforms. We've now added Twitter. Please follow us on Twitter. I'm brand new, trying to grow that up. Just started, a month or so ago, and I really don't know how to get it done except to try and appeal to my current followers to get that ball rolling. We've got I want to say it's 40 followers right now. So I could definitely use some help there from you guys in clicking that follow button. But wherever you're watching from, click the subscribe button. There's a Patriot Think Tank group that is on Facebook that is totally not administered. I don't go on there and do anything to anybody. Facebook yells at me all the time and I just ignore it. So post whatever you want there. Just keep it clean, right? Keep it clean, keep it civil. And that's it. So until next week, folks, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family. I'm out.
And like that,